Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 9 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. We're just 13 hours away from one of the most highly anticipated Senate hearings in recent memory. Tomorrow, former FBI Director James Comey will appear before the Senate Intelligence Committee to discuss his private conversations with President Donald Trump. It'll be the first time Mr. Comey has spoken publicly since the president fired him on May 9th. We're already getting a preview about what to expect from Mr. Comey, and Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has the details from the White House tonight. Ed, what do we say?
Well, good evening, guys. A pretty good day for President Trump today because top intel officials testified as sort of a preamble to this on the Hill and suggested that the commander-in-chief did not improperly pressure them to interfere with this Russia probe. And the teaser we're getting of James Comey's testimony tomorrow backs up the commander-in-chief's account that the then FBI director told him several times he was not under investigation. And even when Comey will detail his February Oval Office meeting with the president, where Mr. Trump asked that he let the probe of General Michael Flynn go, Comey and top advisors did not share this with FBI agents. Comey says because, quote, we also concluded that given that it was a one-on-one conversation, there was nothing available to corroborate my account, signaling that even he admits it's a high bar to prove obstruction of justice. But even so, there could be real political damage to this president, as Comey testifies about their January dinner, for example. He's going to testify, quote, a few minutes later, the president said, I need loyalty. I expect loyalty. I didn't move, speak, or change my facial expression in any way during the awkward silence that followed. We simply looked at each other in silence. Awkward and a bit dramatic, perhaps, from Comey, which is why advisors for the president are telling me tonight they're bracing for two things tomorrow. Number one, even if it turns out to be a nothing burger, the mainstream media can build up the drama so much to make it look like it was devastating for the president. And the other thing is, even if it turns out to be a relatively good day for the president, he can mess it up by live tweeting the hearing and making matters worse. Guys?
Ed, thanks a lot. You didn't know, but nothing burger is a banned phrase by Gutfeld. We're going to let it slide this time.
I should have assumed that. He's got all kinds of phrases.
I know you can't keep up with him.
Ventilating over here.
All right,
I think I just popped a vessel.
Kimberly, Trump's attorney just came out and says the president feels totally vindicated based off of these prepared remarks that Comey is supposed to deliver. You know, based off these remarks, Trump might not even have to live tweet tomorrow because this is pretty good news for the president for the most part. Do you agree?
Yes, and that's why the attorney came out and made these statements, say the president feels vindicated because what so far that we've been able to review in that prepared statement, which is quite detailed, is that the statements are consistent with what the president said transpired between the two of them. So absent any other witness there, any other recording, there really isn't anything to contradict or provide an inconsistent statement to what the president said occurred in the conversation. And by this way, multiple times, on multiple occasions, he was assured, in fact, that he was not the subject of investigation. So it shows then truthfulness on the part of the president, and I think it diminishes any kind of supposed, motive or intent to say that, oh, he wanted to fire Comey because, he was under investigation by the Russians. So at least in terms of the president, that gives him some cover there and validates his statement. So I think that was important.
Yes, he did come away validated based off of these prepared remarks. Dana, the networks and all the cables have decided they're going to go live tomorrow during this testimony.
Yes, including this
Dana Perino.
Oh, Dana.
Yes, I'll be on in the morning.
I walked right into that plug. I didn't even realize it.
Even though you were insulting us at the same time.
Do you think these prepared remarks take the wind out of the sails of some of this intense excitement from some of these left-wing networks?
Yes, I do. And I actually think that that is why Senator Burr, the Republican on the Senate committee, and Director Comey agreed to release it today.
Okay.
Because they don't want it to be, I think that they don't want it to be that dramatic. I'm not going to say that word that Greg hates because I would like him too much for him to pop another vessel. I do think that the Democrats' high hopes for James Comey are going to be dashed again. He's like Lucy in the football with them. However, I do think that based on the written testimony, I can understand both sides of this. I can understand the president wanting to clear his name, saying that this investigation is a cloud. I want it to be cleared, and couldn't you just publicly say what you're telling me?
Yeah.
I also understand the separation of powers, and I respect them, and I think that the independent judiciary is so important, and I believe that FBI Director Comey was prudent in how he handled it. And I think that's what you'll see tomorrow, is that a public servant caught up in a situation where you have that Hillary Clinton doing the terrible thing of starting with, having her private email server, then running for president, him having to get in the middle of that, making, I think, a mistake to comment on that and not recommend a prosecution, then getting himself into this situation because what he says in the written testimony is that he wanted to avoid a duty to correct if, in fact, it changed that he became a subject of an investigation, which could be worse for the president in the long run. So I think that the director was being prudent. I don't think it's necessary for the White House to trash Comey's reputation, and I think that they should go tomorrow, have a great infrastructure event, and just forget about it. Let the lawyer's statement stand, and let your surrogates handle it.
Greg, speaking of forget about it, there's a moment, according to James Comey's recollection, where the President of the United States sat across from him and demanded loyalty. Is that how people in New York talk? Is that kind of par for the course? Because Chris Christie came out and said that's how bosses around town in the city frame things. Are you buying that or not?
Kind of. I think what we learned is that Trump is guilty of being Trump.
Yeah.
Every time something comes up that's supposed to be egregious, you find out that maybe he was inappropriate or blunt, but unlawful? No. So this is not earth-shattering. Although I really thank Comey for releasing this helpful study guide beforehand.
Yeah.
It's like now we can be prepared for this exam. It's like a program you get for a local musical.
Like a take-home test.
But the biggest loser here is CNN.
Yeah.
For predicting, according to sources, Comey was going to testify that he never said Trump wasn't under investigation.
I think we have it right there.
Oh, really? Darn it.
Fake news.
So they weren't just wrong once. They're wrong 3 times because he testified 3 times. So that raises the question.
Three strikes, you're out.
Who was CNN's source? I think it was Kathy Griffin because she was there just hanging around. By the way, the problem with Trump being Trump is that part of it is his responsibility. But every time I was hired for a job, there was always an employee orientation day where they kind of tell you the rules. But apparently, the rule number 1, don't meet alone with the FBI. Number 2, don't demand loyalty. You did that in real estate. You did that in Queens. But you can't do it here. But the thing is, this is the mark of somebody who's not a politician, and this is what happens. Just want to add another note about this Comey memo. It's like a Golden Corral buffet. There's something for everyone. So if you don't like Trump, you could bring up the demanding loyalty thing. You could also bring up lots of other stuff that's in there.
I'm sure Juan will bring it up momentarily.
And then if you like Trump, you can say that Comey vindicated him on that last part and that he didn't interfere. So it's like you can look at it, and it's amazing when you look at how other people in the media are going, oh, my God, impeachment. And then everybody else is like going, nah.
There's nothing there. There's no legal basis.
Don't say what it is.
Okay.
It's a nothing taco.
Nothing taco.
I'm not interested in a nothing taco, as you know.
I don't know.
We're going to leave that one
I want
alone.
to eat a real taco.
Oh, okay.
Juan, Jonathan Turley, who's a well-respected legal eagle, said that although some of these comments by President Trump were maybe not mature, there was nothing criminal about them. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing criminal as of yet. I mean, the closest we could come, Jesse, is the idea that there is a basis for saying that he was trying to interfere with an ongoing investigation by asking the FBI director, can you see your way to let this go, that Mike Flynn is a good guy? But the question then becomes one of intent, and for people like Turley, that is the measuring stick. And can you prove that the president had intent to block or interfere with an ongoing federal investigation?
That's a log on the fire, but this is not going to be the end-all, be-all. So do you think the Democrats are a little disappointed with the build-up to this hearing?
Well, I think you have to be disappointed if you thought, as CNN reported, that there was going to be testimony from, the FBI director suggesting that, in fact, the president had said something explicit in terms of don't do it. And that there was clear evidence of intent, which would then lead to obstruction of justice, which would then lead to impeachment. So if you're not a Trump fan, this was, this be your nirvana. You're going to get rid of this guy. That's not happening, apparently, on the basis of anything that transpired today or likely to transpire tomorrow.
Right.
What we do see, Dana, that I think you and I will disagree on is in the testimony from Dan Coats, the Director of National Intelligence, and Mike Rogers, the National Security Council guy, that they refused to answer questions. So the Democrats, but I would also say Marco Rubio and the independent Angus King of Maine, became infuriated with them and said, wait a second, the White House hasn't invoked any executive privilege. Right. Why are you unable to come before our committee as we're trying to review the facts and then say to us, oh, we can't talk about this. We'll tell you privately, but of course there are no private hearings scheduled.
Well, I do think that, Kimberly, the president benefits from having people around him who are experienced and established in Washington, who don't overreact to things when the president might have said, hey, what do you think about this? So they didn't overreact, so they don't think it's that big a deal. But I guess an argument could be made that if this is all going to be repeated in the press anyway, should they have just been able to say that in public session today and put it to bed so that there's not speculation about what they said behind the scenes?
I guess I think that, it's hard because you want to kind of get the right position, which is tell the truth, be transparent about what happened, but don't even engage in sort of things that are not, relevant or that seem to kind of just be more of like, Russian gossip. The kind of thing that people were looking for this fodder is very distracting. The Democrats, you can see, were getting very frustrated today because they wanted to get something there, and everybody was trying to have it, make it their moment to expose it. But the problem is, Comey went ahead and leaked his own testimony, right? He went ahead. I mean,
well, in conjunction with the chairman, Senator Burr.
Absolutely, and so that's what happened. And so now you have people like CNN who completely reported false information. It's a complete letdown. Is Comey going to radically change his statement tomorrow and make some kind of wild, inconsistent statement? I don't think so. I think he's going to stick to his script and exactly what he said today, which is based on his accounts that he took that were right after, contemporaneous in time with his conversations with the president. So it suggests reliability and credibility, and you're hearing it from the man himself. This is what happened. These are the facts. And I will also tell you subjectively what I felt at the time, which was that he didn't feel that any other action should be taken going forward, that he didn't find any wrongdoing on the part of the president, and he didn't think that the president was trying to end an investigation or, influence him in that way.
Greg, you can imagine these two gentlemen have enormous responsibility in protecting us from threats of all sorts of kind, foreign and domestic. So can you imagine that they're probably sitting there thinking, we got a lot of other stuff to do?
Yeah, I mean, Iran got hit. I mean, there's stuff's going on in this world, and they're dealing with this stuff, and it kills me to watch politicians getting angry over people who are acting just like them. They learned it from the best. That hearing
they all used to be there.
Yeah, this hearing was nothing more than a bunch of old people asking the same question over and over again. It was like, a bunch of...
ageist.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm getting there. It's like you're being at a 24-hour diner and somebody keeps asking how late you're open. It was absolutely... They shouldn't call it a hearing. They should call it hard of hearing. They need hearing aids. And and everybody's showing so much respect. They always have to wind up to get to the question. If you cut all of that stuff out and got to the meat and bones, it'd be shorter than a Ramones song from the first album. But it is about one group of people going after another group of people, and they're relentless. I got to give the Democrats credit. They are absolutely relentless. I wish the Republicans were like this with the real scandals during the last 8 years, the real Democratic scandals. If they were like this, who knows?
Last word to you, Jesse.
Well, I mean, what happened during those real Democratic scandals, I think Eric Holder, what did he say? Invoked executive privilege when they were trying to get to the bottom of Fast and the Furious. You had Lois Lerner taking the fifth on the IRS scandal. You had Hillary basically wiping her server clean. That was more evasive, I think, than some of the answers that were given today. Of course, these guys don't want to go up there and say what their private conversations were with the commander-in-chief in front of the entire world. That's obvious. Today was just another nail in the coffin for this so-called Russian Trump conspiracy. Everybody out there on that table said that there was no effort by anybody at the White House to influence any of their investigations. The Post story is fake news. It didn't happen. So I think a lot of Democrats are sitting around just waiting for the next thing to happen because they don't have anything going on right now.
Which Post story is fake news?
Remember they said that President Trump tried to influence the DNI and the NSA guy to say, hey, Comey, slow down this investigation. None of those guys said that.
They wouldn't say it in
They said they were not influenced, but they didn't say what the conversation was.
Right. So let's be clear.
That's what I'm saying. That he benefits from people who don't overreact and that are prudent and experienced in Washington. And they're like, okay, we're not going to talk about that, sir. We're going to move on. Okay. And we're going to move on. Directly ahead, we'll tell you why authorities aren't tracking enough terrorists. We've got that. Stay tuned.
Today's hearing was supposed to be about surveillance. Since they didn't get around to it, I will. The civil liberties faction who hate surveillance operate on a lie that security infringes on freedom. No, security enhances freedom, which ensures our survival, especially now when we're at war with a disease. Now, libertarians love to twist the Ben Franklin quote when he said that those who would give up liberty to purchase safety deserve neither. It's not about surveillance, but a tax dispute over who pays for frontier defense in Pennsylvania. Ben would have been fine with the NSA. What civil libertarians miss is our enemies realize that our love of liberty makes us vulnerable to their apocalyptic goals. They use our dedication to freedom to infiltrate, kill, and then inevitably rid us of that very same freedom. So what's the answer? We must realize that the survival of liberty requires a coexisting exception, one that allows us to stop the attacks on said liberty. This coexisting exception should sit beside our rights. Think of it as a bouncer whose job is to stop those people whose belief systems run counter to our freedom. So these anti-terror programs are not in conflict with liberty, but act as a tougher, more muscular pal, there to help, making sure that you're safe from dirty nukes, bioterror, and beheadings. Because it's hard to be free when you're dead. KG, are you tired of hearing this security infringing freedom argument? Because it's just like you're supposed to stop there and never actually wonder, maybe they go together.
Yeah, and this is the problem. And these are people, it's like, really, when you really think about it, you're going to be fine with a family member, a loved one, someone in your life being harmed, losing their life, being injured or maimed due to terror that could have been preventable if you actually had the will and the stomach to allow for a little bit of an investigation or intelligence gathering. Why do you have a problem with that? Why does human life, why is it valued so much lower than the right to go ahead and get some information from someone to prevent a loss of life? This is what bothers me so much. It's like, how much do we need to see in London and Manchester and here on our own soil in San Bernardino and in Orlando? How much is going to be enough? And at the Bataclan in Paris to say, that's that. Let's do something about it. Sounds like Theresa May has actually come to terms and to grips with it to say that enough is enough. We've got to do something about this. They are very clear about what they intend and that they will go to any lengths to be able to commit acts of jihad across the world to accomplish their goals. What are we willing to do? Is a small sacrifice too much to ask?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You know, Jesse, they know our system so well that they know that our system allows them to actually work within it. For example, they want Sharia law. Radical Islamists they don't want freedom, but because we're free, we allowed competing ideas into our country, even the ideas that destroy us.
It's a catch-22, and, you know, that's why a lot of these people can come here and fly under the radar and plot and plan because, you know, we don't surveil mosques. We allow freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and, you know, we don't ban hate speech. You hit the nail on the head. Privacy is worthless if you're in a coffin. And it's funny how the conversation has changed since the beginning of the Bush administration. When the initial surveillance program was unveiled, or reported, I think it was the New York Times broke that story. It was huge news, and civil libertarians were furious, and there was protests on the street, and President Bush was a tyrant who was shredding the Constitution. Then President Obama expanded the program. Trump is now reauthorizing the program. Trump might have been the victim of some of the abuses of the program. So I think right now, when the threat changes, you have to change the tools in your toolbox, and that's what we're doing, and I think that's just smart.
You know, Dana, they even in the hearing, there was one point when they said that the programs they were talking about saved countless lives internationally. It wasn't just about, when people say, oh, you don't have to worry about America. There haven't been people coming from this country or that country since 1975. We're safe. But these programs actually have extended people's lives, saved lives internationally.
Right, because the monitoring happens between calls that are or emails from overseas into the United States or vice versa. And so we are able to share with our partners, if we are able, you know, if we have good relationships, an ability to protect people or disrupt plots. And that's something that you don't want them to say in open session,
right?
Because we don't want them to know how we do it. But that's why, like, what Ed Snowden did was so damaging because, as Jesse was saying, the terrorist threats, they evolve with the technology, and so we have to as well. That doesn't mean that we have to give up our civil liberties, but we have to be honest about what we are willing to accept. And so President Trump is actually calling for the reauthorization of, it's called the 702 program.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be good to have the debate and then make all of these members of Congress vote on it before the August recess.
What do you think, Juan? Is the 702 collection valuable?
Well, you know, I was just thinking, why can't Greg and I talk about climate change? Why can't we have a big blow-up on this show? And you know what? I think I've got it. I know how to have a blow-up on the show. I think what we should tell the audience is that, in fact, the reality is here, the biggest threat to reauthorization came from President Trump and Republicans, his allies, who said, oh, Mike Flynn was unmasked under the FISA Act in 702 and asked a ton of questions today about, is it proper to unmask people? And they had to be told by the intelligence community, gee, we keep a strict record of who we talk to, who request an unmasking, or, you know, normally the names of Americans are redacted in these transactions. You are just monitoring conversations, email traffic.
Well, that's unfortunate for the Democrats that there's a paper trail of the unmasking request.
No, there's not.
That could blow up in Susan Rice's face.
No, I think they're glad there is, right, Jesse, because it proves this is nothing unusual and nothing improper was done. But I would say to you that this is the threat, that somehow they have politicized this issue, and not in the way that you described, Greg, but they politicized it to be somehow an attack on President Trump, and that's never been what it's about.
All right. Interesting debate.
I'm going to resist the blow-up that you so badly wanted.
I think you should feel a little chill in the air.
I am. I'm very cold.
Global cooling.
I know. I took a cough drop, so I'm not coughing anymore. America. Ahead, a trash Trump tour abroad, headlined by President Obama, Vice President Biden, and former Intel Chief James Clapper. Next.
In the White House, President Obama said he would do everything he could to help him succeed. Sadly, he hasn't honored that pledge. He was back out again, trashing his successor while abroad, and his vice president and former intelligence chief piled on from overseas.
In Paris, we came together around the most ambitious agreement in history to fight climate change. An agreement that, even with the temporary absence of American leadership, will still give our children a fighting chance.
The United States has had moments of turning inward in the past, but we've always overcome them, just as we will overcome this.
I think, compare the two, that Watergate pales, really, in my view, as compared to what we're confronting now.
It's tough, Dana.
Well, especially on that last one with Clapper. I mean, I think one of the things you can do if you find yourself in a situation, you could ask a question like that. You could say in front of an international audience something that is true, which is there are 2 investigations that are underway, or maybe 3 with the House, but there's a special counsel. Bob Mueller is running one, and then you have the Senate Intel Committee. Those are bipartisan investigations. I'll refrain to comment until then, and then speak about whatever you're there to speak about. I know it's hard when you get asked questions like that, but I do think that there's a way to try to avoid it. I'm thinking back to 2009 when, in that first 6 months, President Obama's team worked to try to dismantle the legacy and also the programs from President George W. Bush on the global war on terror, in particular with Gitmo, and we're saying some pretty harsh things about it. President Bush actually was very quiet, but if you remember, Vice President Dick Cheney was not, and he was extremely effective, and he did. Remember the dual speech that he had against President Obama? They are going to want to defend their legacy. President Obama is going to want to do that. Even if it's veiled, it still hurts, and especially if it's on foreign soil, it's kind of hard to take.
All right, Greg, what do you make of it? Proper, improper? And was it expected?
I don't know. I'm trying to think, has there ever been any topic that has warranted and caused more conversation in our modern lifetimes than Donald Trump? I'm even thinking, not even the weather. People talk about Trump as though it is a separate weather event. Wherever you go, people go, so how's the Trump over there? Oh, well, man, it's pretty strong. Yeah, we had a lot of Trump last night. It was, we had to dig it out. We had to shovel the Trump out of our driveway. It just keeps piling up. I look at what I wasn't upset with that stuff because, again, it's just what people talk about. There's a lot of things that President Obama said that got under my skin when he said about the Paris Accords. You know, we need to give our children a fighting chance. This is that predictable, cheap, hackneyed cliche that the left always uses, that somehow if you come out against something, kids are going to die. But if you know and you look at the Paris Accords, that actually that would be more harmful to children because it's diverting trillions and trillions of dollars away from, like, clean water, you know, cleaner air, all sorts of causes that could use that money that goes to a boondoggle that will have almost negligible effect on the climate over 100 years. So actually, if you vote against, or you're against the Paris Accord, you are trying to give children a fighting chance. And if you're for the Paris Accord, you want children to die. See, how do you feel? That feels really bad, doesn't it?
I think
it feels really bad.
I think a vessel's going to burst. And
no, but I'm just using your toolbox.
No, you're not, because I'm going to tell you.
Used by tools.
Yeah, all you want to do is pretend it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. But anyway, let's move on.
No, facts exist, Juan. I'm waiting for one for you.
Facts do exist.
I'll give you 20 seconds to give me a fact.
How about this? 5 of the last 6 years, the warmest in human history.
Okay, margin of error. Margin of error.
But let me just say, in response to Ms. Perino.
It's not even summer yet.
Wait a second. What happens when Jim Clapper says, oh, you know what, the president says the people in the Intelligence Committee and community are Nazis? That's pretty strong language coming from the president. Or when he fires the FBI
The left's never
director,
called anybody Nazis.
No,
he started that trend.
This is the president, Greg. And then, so for Jim Clapper to say this is pretty big.
I know.
Well, Jim Clapper also just said the other day that there was no evidence of any collusion between Trump and the Russians, and now he says it's Watergate, so get your story straight, Clapper.
When you are going after American institutions.
Okay, but that doesn't have anything to do with the testimony he gave about no evidence of no collusion. No, but, let me just finish. I think President Obama, obviously, a little upset because his library is going to be empty in Chicago after President Trump through dismantling his legacy. No Obamacare, no Paris. The only thing left is the Iran deal. No one wants to visit that wing.
Well, that's bad.
He also says the future belongs to strong men. I think he meant straw men, because that's the only thing the guy talks about. And then you have, you know, Biden's out there saying, you know, we're looking inward. We need to be more engaged. Biden was the one that pulled out of Iraq, let Syria unravel, and then didn't protect our allies in Ukraine when Russia took over.
You worried about Biden running, Jesse?
Yeah. Biden 2020.
No, but that's an effective argument. I'm impressed.
That's true. I know he practiced that all night and he ate his pepperoni pizza.
2 slices.
Good boy. All right. Straight ahead. Full-blown Trump derangement syndrome, and not just on the set, but from some Democrats today. Details after this quick break.
Keatsa presents How to Win at Business. Step 1. Point decisively with the arm of your glasses. Abracadabra, the stage is yours.